he's engaging us in his service. That's his pastime. Anyway, so as a temple becomes a place of Krishna's pastime, or a building becomes a temple, so a home can become a temple. That was the theme. And where there's a temple, then we discussed a little bit, there are many things that take place in a temple, not just worship of Krishna, but many, each of the 7 things. A home can be each one of those 7 things. Of course, one of those 7 is the home becoming a temple. But so then we touched on the topic for this evening. In those 7 purposes, there's 7 because there's some differences, but there's something at the center of each of those differences, and that's remembrance of Krishna. So I said that we would speak this evening, just continuing on that theme of putting Krishna in the center, and by putting Krishna in the center, we create unity. And unity in diversity, as there are 7 purposes, they're diverse. So, one of the things that was touched on yesterday, I want to explore a little bit more today also, which is as far as the purposes of ISKCON, here's a really easy one to answer. Did Srila Prabhupada come to America in order to establish temples or places of worship for the non-resident Indians who had migrated to America? Or did Prabhupada go to the West, the order of his spiritual master, to give Krishna consciousness to the diversity of people that are part of America? That's a really easy one. And so then the next one, are we succeeding in B or are we only succeeding in A? So if we're not succeeding in the purpose, the intention of our founder, then we need to take a look at how we're conducting ourselves so that we can accomplish his intention, this unity in diversity principle. So that's what I want to speak about this evening. And some of you either attended or saw the recording of the presentation on this topic in Gitanagari during the Memorial Day weekend. The theme was ISKCON 50 and the petals of ISKCON. And one of the petals, the corolla that holds all the petals together, the corolla is that center part. Do you know what a corolla is? You know what a flower is? And flowers have petals. What holds the petals together? The thing that's in the middle, it's called the corolla. Like a daisy or a sunflower, they have petals that go out. Or lotus. And then that thing that's in the middle is called the corolla. So that holds all the petals. Now Krishna at the center holds all the petals, all the diversity. And diversity is natural. Of course, sometimes there's blue flowers and sometimes pink flowers and red flowers. This boy gets passed around a lot. He has lots of mothers. He has a big smile, too. So we want to manifest the will of our founder Acharya. We want to know, like we discussed yesterday, what was his intention? Remember those of you that attended. And then, inspired by his intention, that carries our activity. It drives our activity. Just like we spoke a little bit yesterday evening about book distribution. Very, very clearly, Prabhupada wanted book distribution. And so if we take up that activity, there may be some austerity. There's austerity in being a mother, but I see lots of children. So despite there's austerity in being a mother or a father, we do those things because, there's some instinct that tells us this is something that we should be doing. Then there's the spiritual power that says the will of our founder Acharya, this tells us the will of Krishna. And one of his many mothers. This brings us spiritual happiness, and helps us progress on the path to Krishna by understanding the intention. So some things that they're very clear what the founder Acharya's intention is. So let's hear some words from Srila Prabhupada. If we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity. You're going to see this again because this is a famous letter written by our founder Acharya, where he then later said it again and said it again. You'll see some of it. An example of Prabhupada using this phrase came when Prabhupada was visiting in Ireland. And those non-resident Indians don't know so much about Irish history. But in Ireland, something like, between India and Pakistan, or the Hindus and the Muslims, at least in recent, some 50, 60 years of bloody war between the Catholics and the Protestants in Ireland. I'm not so familiar with it, but I know that it's very bad. Not just they would argue, they would kill each other over, they have difference of views between Catholics and Protestants. From those of you that aren't in Ireland, that's really silly. You're Christian, why are you fighting? But they would fight, or like the Muslims, they would fight over this group and that group of Muslims, mercilessly. So Prabhupada was having a discussion with Professor O'Rourke in Ireland, and Professor O'Rourke, their discussion got to the point, how would Krishna consciousness solve the Irish Protestant Catholic dispute? And Prabhupada was saying by placing Krishna in the center. And Professor O'Rourke was not so happy with that answer. And so Srila Prabhupada pointed to the vase, so I just, from images online, took a vase with flowers. And when you look at that vase with flowers, what do you see? So Prabhupada said, here's what I see. Sometimes a variety of examples help us to understand or appreciate the problem better. In the vase, there is a variety of flowers, and that variety helps us better appreciate the idea of flowers. From any point of view, Krishna can resolve all problems, all problems. That is called unity in diversity. Our students come from different backgrounds, but because they are all in Krishna consciousness, they are unified. So the diversity, Prabhupada's using the example of flowers. Differences of flowers helps us better appreciate the idea of flowers. So flowers aren't just the blue ones or the red ones or the yellow ones or the orange ones. a flower may be of this variety, that variety, the other variety, diversity, but the essence can be better understood by seeing the variety. What's a flower? Not just a red one or a yellow one or an orange one. It's so the essence of self, which is to be respected ultimately. Diversity is also to be respected, but the essence helps establish that appreciation. That the essence is Krishna is at the center for the diversity. So here's again Prabhupada using this phrase. It's that same letter to Kirtanananda. If we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity. I am therefore suggesting that all our men meet in Mayapur every year during the birth anniversary of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with all GBC and senior men present. We should discuss how to make unity in diversity. So I've gathered all our senior men and GBC members and future GBC members here. What do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to grow up or you want to stay little? You're not sure? You want to grow up? You want to be a devotee when you grow up? Okay. So, in order that there can be many, many such devotees, then we want to reach out to many, many different types of people and encourage them to put Krishna in the center. But if we fight on account of diversity, then it is simply the material platform. So we want to go to the spiritual platform, and while respecting differences, especially appreciate the essence. The Krishna is at the center, essence. Please try to maintain the philosophy of unity and diversity that will make our movement successful. So, now this is housewarming that I'm speaking on the unity and diversity principle, because this is a unit, and many, many, many units, and making harmony where there's many, many units, so a householder and a householder and a householder. That's the diversity, then making sure that Krishna is at the center. What I'm saying here is the model can be applied to whatever the situation that you want to think of. I like to think of, say particularly because we're establishing a temple, we have a gathering place now, but in course of time establishing a temple, and so there's homes of people where they live, their grahastha ashram, their home where they live to practice Krishna consciousness, and go to the temple, so that's the center where Krishna is. There needs to be, I would like to see, that this mindfulness of making it a place where not only those who are presently coming feel very encouraged to come, but where persons who are not presently coming, including other than the non-resident Indians in Naperville, feel encouraged to come. Or at least that we have a plan to reach those various constituencies. Then that's our founder Acharya's intention. So it starts in the home, it goes to the center, then it goes to how we reach out to the rest of the community. And here's another, following that letter to Kirtananda, another very famous, often quoted letter to Karandar. Karandar was in California, Los Angeles. And Prabhupada was encouraging, he was training him how to create this unity and diversity as a leader, recognizing differences in individuals and encouraging people according to their nature. So he wrote, the point is to be engaged in doing something for Krishna. Never mind what is that job, but being so engaged in doing something very much satisfying to the devotee that he remains always enthusiastic. Our leaders shall be careful not to kill the spirit of enthusiastic service, which is individual and spontaneous and voluntary. Note that there's a little difference in color. This, never mind what that job is, that's this diversity or individual. And then recognizing individuality, placed before them, as Prabhupada says, a fresh challenge. They should always try to generate, leaders should try to generate some atmosphere of fresh challenge to the devotees so that they will agree enthusiastically to rise and meet it. That is the art of management, to draw out spontaneous loving spirit in sacrificing some energy for Krishna. So I'm suggesting, yesterday hinting at it, and this evening more directly and explicitly suggesting, that understanding the intention of our founder Acharya, and then trying to do that which will manifest the will of our founder Acharya, it's the best means of becoming enthusiastic. It's the principle of love, where you know the desire of the beloved and you try to accommodate or fulfill the desire of the beloved. And when you're operating from a position of love, there's so much energy, there's so much creativity, there's so much inspiration. So the fresh challenge, of course, life has enough challenges perhaps. Raising a family in Krishna consciousness, that's a nice challenge. It's a lifetime's work. At the same time, while doing that, so having a home, having an ashram where you can perform such duties, taking care of all the necessities of all that's involved in that. Certainly that's part of the desire of our founder Acharya, the will of our founder Acharya, to have wholesome families. Those who attended the Gita Nagari retreat, that was one of the petals. In fact, a lot of feedback came from people that really appreciated what they heard and understood from that session. Krishna Nandini and her husband, what they had to say and share, and individual conversations, other persons shared. They had amazing, inspiring conversations, so that when the unit of the family is wholesome, then it helps with these other things. Conversely, it's very difficult to do these other things without that one in place. But so the fresh challenge that I'm explicitly encouraging, along with all the establishing good, strong household families and doing your sadhana bhakti so that your progress in Krishna consciousness is strong, and assisting in some way in the temple activity, in the Sunday school for children, or the helping to build this new center, or the deity worship, becoming qualified to do that, and so many things. The challenge is, using the words of Devamrita Swami, that's the low-hanging fruit, the non-resident Indians of Naperville. It's easy, culturally. And the other is less easy. It's more, it's more difficult. They have to be more creative. It's just not like, when such people come to our centers, they may be attracted to Krishna consciousness, but they'll naturally wonder, what's my place here? And may not come back. We don't want that. So what can we do to encourage that group of people, much larger than the non-resident Indian population in Naperville? There's so many other people. I was just visiting in Detroit before coming here, and the place where I stay, it's a new housing development, and it's Little India. Where, you've been there, Rasamrita? I think there's one Chinese family. There must be 60 homes, and everybody from India. And the reason is the school. Really good school, similar to where you live. Really good school, so people that are from Indian background, they have the wealth to buy the homes, to pay the taxes, to get their kids in the really good schools, so they live in the area. High taxes, but good schools, so. And it keeps, the troubled people out of the neighborhood, so you have high taxes, no problem. And it's then making, you get the idea. But that's not the fullness of the challenge, this atmosphere of fresh challenge to the devotees. So in addition to all those things that require sacrifice to be successful at, as mentioned, a number of them and more, it's very important that we reach the non-resident Indian population, you can say the Western population. And and in the course of developing this nice plan for building the temple, at least in the back of your mind, if not somewhere, over on the side of your mind, if not in the front of your mind, some way to reach those people beyond just like Premananda is doing, different groups of people come to the temple from high schools and colleges, and she loves that, and they love her, we'll come back again next year. So not just like your museum. People come to the museum and see, oh, tell me something about this piece over there, and oh, that's very nice. Let me take notes, and I'll write a little paper and get an A in my paper. What's next? But so persons can actually feel they have a place in this this way of life, the life of bhakti. If you're thinking that way, Krishna will give you opportunity. If you're not thinking that way, even if the opportunity is right in front of you, you won't see it. Yes, life is like that. So what's the thinking? Think in terms of what's the intention of our founder Acharya. Meditate on it. When you read, try to hear, what is it, just like the discussion yesterday? In reading his books, what is his intention? What is that gift that he wants to give us? And our previous acharyas, what's the gift they want to give us? And how to manifest that in our lives? And then, through the missionary work, the reaching out unto others, what is it? What's the essence of what they want? Meditate on that, and it will carry your activities into the world of action. And some idea, and then another idea, and another idea will manifest. And then, like this, the encouraging someone along the line of this diversity. So I'll just give one example because it just happened. Actually, before I was in Detroit 2 places ago, and the previous place was in Phoenix. Just a little sharing, for example. Once upon a time, I didn't think much about China. It's just my life was too busy. And then I became chairman of the GBC, and I thought, gee, what am I supposed to do here? So I mentioned something about the disaster in Haiti. So another was, what are you supposed to do when you're the chairman of the GBC? Seems like there should be doing something besides just responding to emergencies. There's plenty of emergencies to respond to. So one of the things I thought is, leadership should recognize excellence. So I went on a kind of a mission of finding out where there are people in the world that are doing something excellently, and then sending a letter of appreciation for their excellence. I don't know how much it was appreciated, but it seemed like that's something that leaders should be doing. Like, a very unknown person is the one that maintains the pamho.net service, the service that ISKCON uses. So I found out where he is and sent him a nice letter. Anyway, that's something that leadership should do. Recognize excellence and sacrifices people are making for the mission of our founder Acharya. Then another one was, China. Whatever the percentage is, I hear different numbers, but whatever the percentage of the world's population, huge. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was the GBC under Prabhupada's direction, had left his body. The person who was his co-GBC, Giridhari Swami, his health was really terrible, and he couldn't perform the function. Then there was another person who was just to tell them, your people are important, we appreciate you. Really, that's why I went, very simply. And appreciated non-resident Indian potential huge. There's a huge potential on a regular basis. Then the other members of the executive committee said, "What now that you're no longer after I stopped being the chairman, can you represent us and go as a special duty officer to China?" So I agreed. So now I'm thinking people from China are important. Then I wasn't thinking that before, just because of the service opportunity. So that here I am at the Phoenix Temple, and there's this one gentleman, I was told, there's one gentleman that comes and he's been practicing Krishna consciousness for some number of years. So I was curious to meet him. I saw him in the program. He's the only Chinese guy in the program. Everyone else, no, there was one other lady that was American. Everyone else non-resident Indian, man, woman, children. So I don't know if he feels out of place there, because he's from Hong Kong. After I met him, in Hong Kong it's only Chinese people. There's a few people, Indian people, that live and work in Hong Kong, in the Diamond District in particular, and where there's money. So so we had a conversation, and the fast forward of it is, we're getting him books in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English, giving him someone to support him, because he's been living in Phoenix for like 20 years. He has a whole circle of people that he knows. He works in a restaurant, so that the Chinese restaurant, so all kinds of Chinese people come. So he's going to become Lord Chaitanya's instrument for bringing together people that are Chinese speaking. Then there's the challenge that he's from Hong Kong and he speaks Cantonese, and most of the people, because it's right near the university, are from the mainland, not from Hong Kong, and they speak another Chinese, Mandarin. So we'll figure it out. But it's this. And he's getting some support. And the temple president is going to, I'll go there, and we have a club at the university, and his eyes got really big. Oh, you have a club at the university. So we can get some gathering place. And as an example of, so then it just created some service. And if those of you that understand this principle, although your lives are full, if you can, be creative. One of the ways to be creative is we don't necessarily have to have gatherings at the temple. We can, but conveniently find somebody that has some interest in Krishna consciousness and support that interest in Krishna consciousness in the area where they frequent. It's a little bit like, Prabhupada came as the emissary from India and met young Americans, and then the young Americans produced more young Americans. And then in the course of time, the economy that had developed for those young Americans bottomed out. So we had to turn to our Indian congregation members to help maintain the temples that those youthful devotees, through their book distribution and other methods, had established. And now it's the Indian, non-resident Indian devotees have to reach out to the Western population and help them become Krishna conscious in creative ways that are appropriate. And it may very well mean as our gatherings with the Indian families started, largely was in home gatherings like this. When you were living up in Grays Lake, just, there was nothing up there. Just had something in your home, and look at, after some time, there's a whole bunch of families coming. Like that, something little, and just do something little nicely. With that, our adage was, do something that's quality with consistency and it'll grow. You remember that motto? And it works. So that's the same thing as I said to Bhakti Chan, is even if it's, one person or two people or three people every Friday evening, whatever seems to be a good time, get together and read in Chinese from Prabhupada's books. Now it's going to have to be two groups, reading in Cantonese and Mandarin. Fantastic. Then we'll have to find somebody else that can lead that discussion. Or if it's students, then we'll just have it in English. Or we'll figure something out creatively, this fresh challenge idea. And then find another person that, can be the leader of that group. And then they graduate and they go off someplace and like that. Etc. The whatever are the different groups. All of us should become expert managers and preachers. We should not be very much after comforts and become complacent or self-contented. There must always be some tapasya, strictly observing the regular principles. Krishna consciousness movement must be always a challenge, a great achievement to be gained by voluntary desire to do it, and that will keep us healthy. As such, I want to give just a few examples of diversity. Here's one. This diversity principle of making offerings to Krishna. He doesn't ask for one thing, he asks for a number of things. Fruit, flower, leaf, or water, with love and devotion, offered, and I'll accept it. So there's diversity in that way. I was thinking, even the founder, because it was in relation to the verse that we read in this morning's Bhagavatam verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Lord Brahma, we read, at the end of his life, he goes to the abode of Lord Vishnu, and those who are worshippers of the Hiranyagarbha form, they also go to the abode of Lord Vishnu. Well, there's other things that may happen to Lord Brahma besides that one. There's lots of diversity. And in the course of the Brahma Samhita prayers, there's that verse dealing with Lord Brahma. And there's all kinds of different places that Lord Brahma can come from and go to. And he's the founder of he's one. That's the unity. And there's lots of diversity amongst Lord Brahmas. Taken from a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes, a Brahma who is the most exalted karmi of the universe will have to come back to the material world. a living entity who has achieved the post of Brahma by being the greatest speculative philosopher within the universe, after which he may attain impersonal liberation. A living entity who has been awarded the post of Brahma due to being a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he enters into the personal abode of the Lord after his lifetime. That's from the 11th canto. And from the 3rd canto, a Brahma who is a devotee of the Lord, but who is a Vedha Drishtya, which refers to the tendency to think oneself independently powerful, such a person may achieve the Lord's abode at the time of annihilation, but when the creation begins again, he has to return and again take the post of Brahma. Don't ask me to explain that one. And in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami writes, in a Mahakalpa, where Lord Vishnu personally becomes the creator, Brahma, he enters the material universe as Vraja, Brahma, and enjoys transcendental bliss. Lots of diversity there. And to add to that diversity, we know from Brahma Samhita that the Lord Brahma in Brahma Samhita was situated in the relationship of Madhurya Rasa. He realized his relationship as an eternal maidservant of Krishna. And the Lord Brahma in the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam had the relationship of friendship. When he came before the Lord stood up and shook his hand. Friendship. Sakya Rasa. So, diversity. And that's the world in which we live. And certainly the mission of Prabhupada with his 7 purposes of ISKCON, mentioning again, there's natural diversity in these different elements, but there's harmony within them as well. Or our 2 great acharyas, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, their styles were so diverse. Bhaktisiddhanta was Nrsimha Guru. He would confront people and their deviations or straying from the standard. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur's policy or his style was humble persuasion, not confrontation. So differences amongst these 2 persons, and they had such enormous regard for one another. Particularly Bhaktisiddhanta had such enormous regard for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we could go on. I think you get the message. The message is we need to carefully contemplate the intention of our founder. Again, I didn't remember to put the slide up. I wanted to show the slide here, the thing that shows the 4 boxes and the 4 columns. And the intention can easily be lost. What can hold us together, so we'll experience ISKCON 100. I guess you guys will be around for that. At least you'll be around for 50 years from now. You're 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. You should be around hopefully you'll be around for 50 years. And one of the things that will help ensure that is that the teachings are comprehensively understood, not just learning slokas. Learning slokas is nice, but a little sharing. I was giving a class in Milan, in Italy, in the middle of March. And I can't remember what was it in relation to. It was near Nrsimha Chaturdasi. no, so I can't remember exactly, speaking on Prahlad Maharaj, and when he spoke, he's just 6 years old, and when he spoke, it was so profound, but it wasn't just recitation. So I explained something that, without the whole history, Srila Prabhupada was not wanting ISKCON Press at the time that it was ISKCON Press before it was BBT, to print Bhagavad Gita verses in a little book that you could put in your pocket, and from time, because the person in charge of the press suggested this to Prabhupada, can we print like this? And he said no. Because the differences between one translation and the other of Bhagavad Gita is not so much the translation of the verse, but it's the commentary. That's where the difference is. And without reading the commentary, they won't understand the verse. So he said no. And Lakshmi Moni was in the audience, and she, enthusiastically raised her hand and said, Prabhupada said the same thing in the Dallas Gurukul. And she gave the history. Prabhupada was in Los Angeles. They had started, at his instruction to do so, they started a Gurukul in Dallas, and he wanted to come and encourage them. So to prepare for Prabhupada's arrival, they had all the students learn Bhagavad Gita verses. And they stood before Prabhupada and, very proudly and happily recited their Bhagavad Gita slokas. And at the end, not in front of the children, but to the teachers, Prabhupada said, don't do this, because they won't understand the meaning. More important that they understand the meaning than they just learn slokas. Now, it's nice to learn slokas. You know many slokas, but you're also learning the meaning of those slokas. And that's what's important. The Bhaktivedanta purports. That is, where the position of Krishna being at the center comes out in the purports. Because other people make translations of Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna disappears. Explicitly in some cases, not unto Krishna, but to the unborn, unmanifest within. Don't think of Krishna. Think of the unborn, unmanifest within, etc. So how to awaken that dormant consciousness in this, this diversity? Obviously, going forward in time, the Naperville Center is going to be predominantly non-resident Indians. And if we just leave it like that, that's all it's going to be. And we won't be fulfilling the intention of our founder Acharya. So I'm giving you a challenge. And I'm also thinking in these terms, in terms of my service as well. How to. And the how to will come if you're thinking what the intention is and you're meditating on how to fulfill the intention. Then the how to will come. You try this and you try that and try the other thing. It's just stay fixed on the intention, and then the form will come from the intention. Book distribution is a fantastic medium. And then once people have the book, then what? They come to the center that's all non-resident Indians. They don't come back. You have to do something besides that. We distribute the books, and then what comes after that? And then what comes after that? And what comes after that? This Bhakta Chen, he chants 16 rounds almost every day. He was honest. He said, sometimes it's too busy. But he doesn't have any support. And so imagine if he had some support and do some outreach, and then we got a whole other thing going on. It doesn't have to be at the center. It has to be a part of the outreach and cultivate people out there. Somehow or another, using Prabhupada's phrase. Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
I came to know from I heard from preachers, Western devotees who preach here and in Canada, that when you have to preach to the Westerners, you cannot mix them with Indian crowd because their mindset is different. And so some of them are preaching to them separately because they feel like it's not going to work out the way the Indian crowd works. This last week, I had two separate young American girls come to me, various contexts. Bhakti Marg Maharaj was here. One girl walked in through his training the children program, and she continued coming back. Another person also in another part of Naperville. Another person who contacted an American is U.S. Congressman Bill Foster, and his religious outreach assistant contacted me saying that they wanted to come and visit us, and I had invited them to come in this coming, I think, July 10th. So these are like random incidents which are happening. So now we are, as you know, we are trying to develop Bhakti Vriksha programs and all that, but what will we do with these, unless there is a specific program tailored to suit them, how do we take it to the next level?
There's so many variables. It depends on the person who's doing the outreach. It depends on the person who's being reached. It depends on their network, their social circle. Depends. One of the principles to entertain, this is the Diversity-2016 Swami principle, which is using the manpower and the finance of the base, have some other facility that's more comfortable and like them. To gather together. In their community. It's something like, here's three examples. Gokulananda had an idea at one point in time to just have like a little place in the Spanish community. It can be like their place, their gathering place. Or like the Russian community, they have here in Chicago. They have kind of like their place. They've got a relationship with somebody that gives them the space, or they pay something modest, and it's like their space. Or the Russian community in New York, in Brighton Beach, which is in part of Brooklyn. It's near the ocean. They have their place. They still come and have some special classes that Chandrasekhar Maharaj holds. And there's a Russian translator, but they all speak English anyways by now. But there's just the reach, according to the person that's doing the outreach, the person who is the main contact individual who is helping to gather people together. You either in their own space, something that they're comfortable with, in a home or in a neutral space or some gathering place. And or, some place during the Sunday program. I'm sure you remember we had at one point in time 5 or 6 simultaneous classes. We had that in New York at one time for the Russian people, for the Spanish people, for the young people, for the new people. You could do the same thing, for the older Hindi-speaking people. Have a little gathering for people they don't understand English. So it can be in the center, but if it's something like, it depends on the person. It depends on the main contact persons. But Canada is known not for being. They're proud of this. America is the melting pot. You lose your identity. You merge. And in Canada, their motto is recognizing differences and honoring differences or something like that. So ethnicity is fine. So there's this group. So at the center, they may have a number of different things. Because of the outreach that Deva Amrita Maharaj did in Toronto, a loft program, whatever they call it, they now have tons of Western people coming to the temple and feeling quite comfortable because they have their own place. Now they're entering into another place that's, like Naperville, 90% or stronger Indian families in Toronto. Huge population, Guyanese, Trinidadian, and Indian, just like UK. Huge population of Indian families. But they're feeling very comfortable because they have their own base. And it's, like the Russian devotees from Chicago that come to the temple. They have their own place. When they come to the temple, they're part of the kirtan. They like the robust, etc., the fantastic deity worship. They love doing decoration for festivals. They have their role, but they also have their place. So supporting that, whatever seems to work based upon the person doing the outreach and the person who's being contacted. We go over on the other side of the bridge and hang out with them on their side of the bridge. And then when they're comfortable, we may take a while, even by intention on our side, but then come out over on this side of the bridge. But then I don't feel like I don't fit in here, because they fit in over there. They're just coming to the larger gathering. So whatever it takes.
It will definitely require someone to dedicate to cultivate that group. You need the manpower to do that.
Where there's will, there's a way. And just like, you're Indian and you're an older generation person. But, somehow, because of something that's within you, you can reach out and make people that are not old and Indian feel comfortable. But, you've got administration running around. So others need to understand that's important. My sense is that the younger generation of Indian families that have their jobs involving in the marketplace, the career place, they're not like they're Americanized necessarily, but they can relate and they're relatable. Just like here I am. I'm not born in India. So, and I'm not born in China. But because there's interest, like that. So someone that has the interest, and they can focus according to the interest and understand the culture and what's important to people, and where there's a will, there's a way. If there's the right person. In Phoenix, all they have to work with is non-resident Indians. They don't have anything else. They built the temple, or they bought it was a Buddhist temple before it was a Hare Krishna temple. Phoenix. It was built by a Buddhist group. It was bought by the Hare Krishnas from the Buddhist group. I think they got a bigger one. So somebody from that group. So, in that case, it's somebody that, because they lived in Phoenix, husband and wife, their job required them to go to San Jose for 1 year. They got 1 year of training under Vaisheshika Prabhu, so he's now the Sankirtan leader now that he's back. They'll probably be the one that's going to go to the university and meet the Chinese students and find out someone from mainland China that can lead a discussion and train them up and so forth. But you just have to, where there's a will, there's a way. And the will comes from understanding, but this is my contention, understanding the intention of our founder Acharya. There's the will. Then we can make all kinds of sacrifice, no problem. No, health permitting and resources permitting. Somehow. And then reciprocation from Krishna comes because it's the will of our founder Acharya. That indicates Krishna's will. And that's very inspiring. So the how-to comes from stopping, not just being comfortable, as Prabhupada puts it here, but undergoing a little difficulty, finding the ways and the means. Anything else? A little different way of conducting a home warming program. I hope it's okay. Yes?
But I'm inspired. I'm very inspired to hear you're planting this seed of thought in our minds, because I remember years ago when you came to Gurney and encouraged us to do the children's program simultaneously with the adult program. At that time, my understanding was so limited. I had no idea, what it is today. It would develop out of it. I had no concept. So I'm sure, just like everything else have grown.
Sure, it's everything starts from the beginning, from a seed. I'll just share this with you, taking that you just mentioned. First it started with children, then became children. Since the children are coming, let's do something with the adults. So you stayed with the children, Rancha did something with the adults. And then you moved and you had to start all over again. Then it started all over again. And then it was, this is so nice, let's have family day. You remember that one? So we had, the family day. And then the family day said, hey, this is nice, let's do longer than a family day. And then it was, let's do it for a few days. Then it became a week, then it became 2 weeks, then it became 2 of them. And everywhere I go now, they have Gita camps. There was a time when there was no Gita camps, but it started with a seed. We didn't, that wasn't, anyway, we didn't know what that little seed would grow into. They've seen what has been done and they're replicating, and it's now, anyway. And same with this, we need to do it. And it's not going to start big, it's going to start with a seed. Someone feels some inspiration and they find a way to make that inspiration manifest. And like Prabhupada says, preaching means you see a spark and you fan the spark. Moved his hand like this, you fan the spark. And the spark then becomes a flame. And the expert preacher, the flame becomes a big blaze. Like that. Little spark, little spark. Okay, I guess we're done.